Hello and welcome. I am Dogbert here with another sports card video because I'm taking you to school. Class is in session. It's time to learn some basic things about sports cards, mostly like the jargon and some things you're going to hear. So all that being said, let's get into it and let's shrink me down and put me over here in a corner. Alright, a little bit smaller. Hopefully this doesn't interfere. If not, I'll take myself off the screen. So, who is this video for? It could be for anybody really who's coming into it, but I'm primarily geared to somebody who collected in the 80s and 90s. This is when I used to collect before coming back. I think a lot of people did who are now my age and are coming back into it because we've gotten older and we have money now. And I wanted to tell you, if you're somebody who's still holding on to those cards from the late 80s, early 90s, that's called the junk wax era now, meaning that they just printed so much of this stuff, it's not valuable at all. Very little value, I should say. I mean, you can literally go out and find people with literal cases upon cases of this stuff, unopened wax. It's really ridiculous just how much there's really still out there, not even opened, much less how much was actually opened and on the market. You can find cards, Hall of Famers pretty cheap yet. The only time there's ever any values if you can get one that is a high grade, which we'll talk a little bit about grading in this video. But those are rare because these were such mass produced. I'm talking millions upon millions here of cards. It's just way too much supply. That's why this became known as junk wax era. And the joke is, if you burn the cards, you'll be helping the hobby a lot more. There's stories of the famous '89 Upper Deck Ken Griffey Jr. Upper Deck employees just printing sheets and sheets of them and then selling them off, making $50-100 each back then. And so there literally is millions of those cards. We know there's over 1 million been graded of that card. Particularly, it's the most graded card in history right now, and it's just absolutely ridiculous how much there was. So sorry, you're not retiring. You'd be lucky if you get a few bucks. So we got to first talk about who is making cards nowadays, because the companies have changed. It's really come a bit more consolidated than it was back in the junk wax era. And we also have to remember, we now have licensed cards and we have unlicensed cards. The reason for this is because now the licenses to produce with the team logos and everything is only given to one company for each sport, rather than like in the past, in the junk wax era, every company could get the license. I remember for like baseball, we had Fleer, Donruss, of course, Topps / Bowman, Upper Deck, just a few named off the top of my head. So for baseball, it is Topps, Bowman. What I didn't put on here though is that you'll sometimes hear this referred to as Fanatics. Fanatics is that big giant company that is pretty much taking over all the sports memorabilia, sports cards. So when you hear Fanatics, they're talking about Topps Bowman. They just bought Topps a couple of years ago. It happened when they took over Topps and bought them out. And Topps has owned Bowman for I don't know how long. So those two card sets are Fanatics or Topps Bowman. Basketball, it is right now Panini, along with football. Panini still has those licenses. That will be changing in a year or two, though, when these licenses are going to Topps. So expect Topps Fanatics to essentially have a monopoly. Upper Deck has hockey. They also have, I think, golf. They also have AEW wrestling. I know that. I'm not sure what else they do. WWE is currently with Panini. Again, this will change in a couple of years. They tried actually, Fanatics and WWE got together. They wanted to give the license to Fanatics. They tried ripping it from Panini early. Panini drug them the torch, though, and made them have to stand by their agreement, or Panini gets to go to 2026. So there's that. So we're still going to have Panini WWE cards for now. And then the other one I want to throw in here is college basketball and football. These cards now exist. and that is Topps Bowman, who has the licenses for them. Now, unlicensed cards, there's a lot of debate over this, whether they're good. There's some very big diehards are never licensed, never licensed. And then news broke this week that Topps Chrome is coming back for basketball, and it's going to be unlicensed. And all of a sudden, man, has their tone have to change. Now, I respect the people who have not changed their tone because they actually have, morals, and they're standing by what they like. And they said, I'm never buying unlicensed. Fine, that's great. But unlicensed cards, I think, have gained a lot of traction in the last couple of years. I know I deal with unlicensed cards. I make quite a good amount of money off of them, so keep that in mind. And now with the Topps Chrome thing, because people are such big fans of Topps Chrome, all of a sudden they're willing to embrace unlicensed basketball cards. So, like I said before, like how only one company has the license, because Panini doesn't have a baseball license, they actually do make unlicensed baseball. And when it comes to baseball cards, though, I will say the most hatred against unlicensed lays here. People who buy baseball cards generally want the license. They don't really consider the unlicensed. I found those harder to sell and have gotten out of that market totally because of that. You have another company called Leaf, if you remember them. They are back. They make some interesting designs. They do all sports, even including wrestling. And I mostly deal with their football products. Topps is going to be making basketball and a football unlicensed set this year. The summer actually coming into it. It's going to be Topps Chrome for basketball, and I forget what the name of the football product is. And another one I deal with, Sage, who makes football cards. I really like them. And there's also another one like Onx, isn't I think their name. And I've never dealt with them at all, though. So each company now makes many sets now. That's something you need to be aware of. Some sets are cheaper, more mass-produced. While there's also high-end sets that are low print runs but very expensive to buy. As you see when I do videos on each of these individual sports and talk about the sets, you'll see like there's some boxes out there that are literally like $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 for a quote-unquote box that contains like one pack of cards, which could be 6 cards, 5 cards, 10 cards, whatever. So we'll get into that more in another video. This is just so you know that. There's also now a lot of parallels, autographs, inserts, and combinations of the above, as we'll get into parallels. But yes, now you can get autographed cards. I'll talk a bit more like that when I get more of the sets. There's inserts. There's combos of these. There's a whole bunch of stuff now. So something or jargon you need to know is base or base card. And I think the dog's going to be a problem, so I'll go way over here instead. And this is more or less referring to the basic cards you get in a pack that everybody gets. These are the typical base set. These cards are considered the least desirable. Remember, least desirable does not mean if they have no value. They won't have as high a value as other cards, like the inserts or the parallels, though. So keep that in mind. And there are some base cards that can be worth a little bit of money. It just depends on the player and the set. And if you hear something like they say it's out of $4.99, out of $150, out of $99, out of 49 is another one that's popular, out of whatever, these are known as serial numbered cards. They are literally only X amount, whatever the number is produced of that particular version of that card. So these are actually, they have a bit more value because, there's only 499 in the world. There's only 150 in the world. There's only 99 in the world. So you can see the value, why they would be considered valuable like that. And then there's also, what you also hear is the fabled most desired one of one, aka 1/1. This is exactly what it sounds like. It's a serial number card that there is only one of, period. Now, there could be multiple ones of cards that look similar but are slightly different. And those are because those are called parallels. This is a regular card or insert card that has something different about it. It could be a different color border. When you're talking with tops, they actually have different card stocks sometimes. They could be missing a nameplate. That's an old throwback Panini likes to do. They could have a border. They could just have like a refractor type look to it. They could be a totally different card design. The border color could be like an animal type skin. There's a ton of them. But to give you an example, this is a Sage product. This is Caleb Williams' next level card. This one's really tame compared to what you'll actually find. You can see the base card here would be a black, but there's also a silver version. Here's a blue version. This is actually purple. It doesn't scan very well, but if you actually saw it in person, you'd see it's definitely purple. And then you have the gold. There's supposed to be a red, but I've never actually seen a red in person or even online. But this, believe it or not, is quite tame for a set. There's literally like some sets that have like 100 different parallels. It is ridiculous now. And if you collect them all and you get all the same color of all the different colors of a player, all the different parallels, that is called collecting a rainbow of a player on a particular set. You'll see this how nuts this all is later on. So some other slang regarding is slab or slabbed card. This is just referring to a card that has been graded by a professional grading company. And you can also hear a card that is a 10, a 9, a 9.5, an 8, 8.5, a 7, whatever. These are just the numerical grade that has been given to a graded card. And there's three big grading card companies right now. PSA is definitely number one when it comes to sports cards. They also do like TCG, Pokemon cards as well. But their big thing is, of course, sports cards, and they're number one, highest resale value. Probably the one you should be going with if you're looking to resell. SGC, they're number two, and they're being bought by PSA. Their cards don't go for as much. Their slabs do look different as we get into more into grading. And then last but not least, we have Beckett, which is the end of the big three. This one's really floundering. Really lost a lot of value. They've really shot themselves in the foot. When I do a whole video on grading, I can go more into that. There are a couple other companies I would consider, and that CGC is one of them. They're not big in the sports card market, but they're number one over in the TCG area, like the Pokemon, the different table card games. They're number one. They're also big on comics. They are a very reputable company. Whether or not they'll ever be able to compete and become one of the big three in sports cards, hard to say. Another up-and-comer is Tag, because they use AI grading, don't use human grading. I don't know if they'll ever be able to scale up. It's going to be years, though, before they could even crack the top three, much less rival PSA. So that's pretty much all I got for you today. I think this is a pretty long video for this. This is 13 minutes long. I'm going to be breaking down each sport and going into the sets and getting more detail. I'm going to be doing a buying and selling video as well, where you can buy and sell, what my strategies are, what I'm doing. So until next time, everybody.